welcome to MFA Writers. After our holiday break, some behind-the-scenes planning, and a lineup of exciting new guests, we are officially back. If you're wondering where Jared is, never fear. The team is simply expanding. My name is Bree Gumaz, and I am joining MFA Writers as a co-producer. A quick bit about me. I live in Missoula, Montana, with my partner, 2 dogs, and 2 cats. I'm a graduate of Vermont College of Fine Arts Creative Nonfiction MFA program, and a lover of keeping writers informed while breaking that MFA mold. You'll find me in the inbox, on social, and occasionally on the pod. So please don't be shy. We would love to hear from you. Send us a DM, tag us, or comment on our latest post on Instagram or Twitter. Or you can always email us at mfawriterspodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to be a guest on our show or know someone who would be a great fit, you can apply at mfawriters.com. And while you're there, if you love the podcast and would like to support us, you can buy us a coffee or donate directly at buymeacoffee.com/mfawriters. Last but not least, don't forget one of the greatest contributions of all, which is rating and reviewing the podcast on your podcast player of choice. Now on to the good stuff. Today's episode is a faculty episode, a person I'm very proud to introduce, a fellow mold breaker and faculty of my alma mater, VCFA. Someone so bright, captivating, kind, and courageous that you can't help but fall in love with them within moments of being in their presence. Enjoy the episode, and thanks for listening.
Welcome to MFA Writers, the podcast where we talk to creative writing MFA students about their program, their process, and a piece they're working on. I'm your host, Jared McCormick. Today we've got a special faculty episode with Edwin Bodney. Edwin is a Black, queer, non-binary artist, award-winning educator, and nationally recognized poet from Los Angeles. As someone living with MS and the rest of the world's chaos, they strive to remind all vulnerable communities of their joy and laughter. Edwin and their work have been featured in platforms and publications like Button Poetry, Platypus Press, The Exposition Review, The Advocate, Lexis, TV One, Amazon Prime, UW-Madison, and many others. Their full-length book of poetry, A Study of Hands, came out in 2017 and is available through Not a Cult Media. Edwin was a longtime co-host of The Poetry Lounge, one of the country's largest and longest-running nonprofit poetry venues. They currently work supporting LGBTQ plus students at California State University, Dominguez Hills, and they teach in the low-res MFA program at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. Today, Edwin has brought a poem to read for us.
When I say we are all teen gays, after Olivia Gatwood's When I Say We Are All Teen Girls. When I say we are all teen gays, I mean the blooming happened before the birth. I mean someone cut us away from our mothers to become more mothers in a house of burning children. When I say we are all teen gays, I mean we all know about the neighborhood boys and how each day they could cherry bomb the front yard into summertime confetti, the rest of us pressing ourselves into the leaning tree, whispering our secret songs into all of its wounds. When I say we are all teen gays, I am telling you, we all start with a weapon that is too soft to injure. One we only want to wield so the other kids won't notice what is melting in our hands. Hands so empty we could spin the world. So teen and so gay, we could pastel dream our hollow arms into thin birds, swift with whimsy over schools of grass made lazy by July. As teen gay as David, 6th grade, summer break swimming pool, who stared at me with eyes the color of a sun dancing through water. I don't think I knew much about love then, but I know David took my hand and my heart took a firework and swallowed it when I say we are all teen gays. I'm recalling the time we all had a pulse that could heartbeat all the color back into the skin of the night. I'm saying I know someone tried to whisper our names in the dark, then disappeared beyond the front yard where our grandmothers let us roam with our wrist and swish the way fire was meant to burn and flick. When I say we are all teen gays, I mean, we all once had a naked field we could run through to dress our shoulders in a moment more free than dry sheets in the wind. I mean, we all have an afternoon after school where the air didn't speak and all we heard was our own voice. When I say we are all teen gays, I'm asking you to remember when you heard yourself as the perfect pitch. When someone called us home and our legs turned to spools of copper, threading us through the earth, wearing the sheath of someone else's mouth, I'm saying at the start of it all, we're a breath made of spring and there is someone to fall in love with us in every season. When I say we are all teen gays, I mean a flower blooms in the face of everyone we make contact with, and then, out of those shapeless roots, we are born.
Damn, Edwin, that was so good. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for reading that for us.
Thank you.
That was great.
It's like that's like a prime premiere there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't read that one yet. I haven't heard that one yet. So that was really fun for me to listen to.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's been fun for me to kind of tinker with. I'm still ironing out some of the wrinkles in it, but ultimately it's there, and I'm grateful for Olivia's voice to be there for me.
Yeah, it was beautiful. All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me, having read your work, knowing your career, that LA is a big part of your life and who you are as an artist. So I wanted to start there. What was it like growing up in LA, and how does the city influence your work today?
It's funny that you also bring up that it's very clear that Los Angeles is a major influence, and it's just a part of my DNA. I'm a part of its DNA, but bringing that up because part of that is also so deeply protective. Being an LA native and having so much LA native family, and even my chosen family now, so many of them are also LA natives, or if not LA, very adjacent, right? So really understanding, I think that Los Angeles has very particular dynamics when it comes to so many different things, race and capital being obviously very, very high on that list. I feel deeply protective of this place that raised me because it's so good. And the portrayal, whether it be because of media or whatever else, Hollywood, yada, 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 I get it. I understand. Um, it's so much not that stuff. It's so rich in the voice of a community, right? In the way that we do care for each other. I think that we've had obviously really cataclysmic events happen across the world, of course, but just in LA, we've had the fires at the top of the year. We've obviously got ice running through the city. But in that, so many other parts of the world have gotten to see the kind of care, the kind of heartbeat that really pulses through the veins of LA. And so people need to know that. I think that people need to know I exist as this authentic being, right? I at least that's always my intention. That's how I want to move through the world. I want to be so transparent that, I want to be so soft it's transparent. And I want to see that in other people. And so if people know that that is real of me, and they know that I come from this place, then they know that the place that I come from is also that real. Me writing poems in this city that Los Angeles is and has always been to me, I'm a limb of the city through which it writes its story. And that is so astronomical to me.
I love that description of being protective of the city because LA is really interesting. I mean, no matter where you're from, it's in your DNA, right? And you're in its DNA. the places that we're from just are a part of us, whether we realize it or not. But LA is interesting because it's so in the public eye that
Yeah.
I feel like people create this narrative around it or are fed a certain narrative about it. So I can totally understand how being from that place where you see all the good and the bad, all the nuance of that place,
Mhm.
to feel protective when people try to paint it as one thing or the other.
Yeah, and just like people, people believing that like LA is all concentrated to either Hollywood or Santa Monica. And those they have their gems for sure. I'm at I mean I was at Santa Monica, like the beach, the pier all the time. But ultimately it's like, yeah, the rest of the city, the rest of this place that exists is an entirely otherworldly living organism. And it's just so rich in everything that I think it means to really be alive.
So I was right, is what you're saying. It means a lot to you.
100%. Yeah, you are not far off base at all with that highly intuitive conclusion. But so yeah, that's really that's the way that I move through my work. That's LA is a framework through which I move through my work.
When did you first become interested in writing and poetry?
I first became interested in writing and poetry really around middle school, kind of leaving middle school, entering high school, because I had always been really a STEM kind of a person. I had always been more of a math and numbers person. Um, I think it was we were in 8th grade. We had an assignment where we had to basically write anything. We had to write a paper, and it was pretty open-ended on what we could do. It just the subject matter had to be Holocaust related. And so this feels just automatically daunting because one, I'm like 13 and I have to write a paper, and I'm just like, no, thank you. And then I'm like, that means I'm gonna have to do more reading, and I have to do, and I'm just like, ah. So the creativity of poetry jumped out at me, right? Where I said, okay, there's something sensory that I can attach to, and obviously, at 13, I didn't have any of this to articulate, but this is, hindsight. This is what it was.
Right.
Um, and so I'm connecting those dots. How I got to that point was that I stumbled upon and I was researching Holocaust stuff, and then I found there was a specific camp that imprisoned mostly women and children. And when they liberated the camps, this particular camp had these remnants and these like sort of discarded archives of like etchings in the wall and like scraps of paper or napkins or cloth like that had poems written on them. Some of those things were available to me at the time online to be able to read. And so I basically took those and I said, well, I'm just going to explore these poems. And the poems were mostly from children. And I said, I want to explore the poetry of these children and how it encapsulates, their experience as they could tell it then, right? I completed the essay, of course, and turned it in. And the day we got our essays back, everyone got their paper back but me. And my teacher, this older white, very stoic man, kind of a typical stereotype of what you would envision a middle school English teacher to be. He asked me to stick around for a sec after class, and so all the rest of the class dismissed, and I'm like, uh-oh. And he was like, I wanted to just like give you back your paper, myself, and like have a moment because this is like one of the best essays I've ever read.
Wow.
And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, like you just really keyed in on the ethos of this work. And I think he literally said, I don't know if you've ever considered it, but you should consider a profession, a career in journalism. And I was just like blown away because I literally had never considered it. So that was kind of what put me on the trajectory. At the same time, my mother had started dating someone new who eventually became my stepfather. And he introduced me to the open mic world. I, went a couple times and was completely held hostage by that experience, right? So in the best way possible. So that just roped me in right away. I was just like, oh, this is so cool. Like, this is also terrifying. Like, I don't know about the whole public speaking part, but like, this is just so cool. People's performances are blowing me away. So then I shared once or twice, I remember. And the community was really encouraging, and that kind of really, really continued, propelled the trajectory even more. And then my stepdad goes, well, I've been hearing about another place, the Poetry Lounge. And this place, it used to take place in this big theater, and you just walk into a new dimension, really. You just, that really shifted, I think, how I would exist in the world from that day forward. And I think obviously there's so many things that are a testament to that to this day. But that was my introduction to like writing and the lounge, and just even thinking that writing was a possibility that I could like even make tangible contact with.
And then years later, you ended up co-hosting at the Poetry Lounge. What was it like going from being in the crowd to being on stage there?
It to this day, it feels like so surreal because, I've been going to the lounge since I was 15, so that was 20 years ago. And the first 5 years that I went, I was just an audience member in this, in the shadows, just there, high and by. I, never really stuck around, wasn't really building community. And so it was interesting. Like there was 5 years there where I was just listening. I didn't share anything. Again, the public speaking thing was also terrifying. So to go from that was 5 years in, and I'm like 19, I think was the first time I shared openly at the space. And then we get to, 23 is when one of the founders who was still hosting at the time, he was like, there's 4 founders to the Poetry Lounge. And one of them pretty much kind of held it down as the main host for probably the last 10 to 12 years. And in 2013, I was 23. There was me and a couple of other community members, and at this point, chosen family, who we had similar stories or really parallel stories in our regards to our relationship to the space. And one day he was just like, okay, we need there was always 2 halves. There used to be 2 halves to the lounge. So it was always like a 9 to 10:30. We would take a 5-minute intermission, and then we would go until midnight after that. And so the original host, Shihan, who I just have tremendous gratitude to for me becoming a person. But he hosted the first half, and then he basically started looking around and said, well, who do I believe can hold the second half down? And the first half was always way more dynamic and boisterous, and it was really performance oriented. It was always packed that first half, because it was also earlier in the evening and everybody would show up. And even before the gate opened, there would be a line around the corner. And Shihan was also somebody he's probably considered by many, definitely by me, the godfather of spoken word, if that's a title. And so a lot of people want to come and, impress him, right? They want to impress the master. And so you get a lot of that dynamic. Everyone's coming and they're trying to be the flashiest they can and put on their best performance. And there's obviously tremendous value in that, right? Especially when we're talking about a communal space where people are being charged to come and see a show. There's so many different layers to it. But and so he held that down because he has that kind of energy. People also say, myself and some of the other hosts who have inherited things also inhabit some of that energy, or at least enough of it. Really it's about just, are you able to capture a room and move the energy around the room in the way that it needs to move. It really is that. All the other stuff, the funny and all that stuff, kind of you work on that part. But basically, he always held that first half down, and then he was like, we need a second half host. So let's do a rotation of like 3 different hosts. Let's have one of you go first Tuesday, one of you go second Tuesday, one of you go fourth Tuesday, and then I'll do the third Tuesday of every month. And we were like, okay, fine. And it was mortifying, but I was like, fuck it. Okay. Like if he believes I can do it, then fuck it, I'll do it. And so that was what happened. Like that following month, we started that rotation, and I hosted ever since. It's been 12 years. I just finished the 12th year hosting and retired. I can go to bed on Tuesday nights now.
Well, congratulations. It sounds like an amazing experience. And leading up to this interview, I was thinking about that idea of performance and poetry and that relationship between poetry and performance. I've been to a lot of prose readings that have been pretty good, but nobody really goes when they get on stage like a poet does, right? I mean, those performances are always really fun, really engaging. And so I was curious just to hear you talk about how you think about that relationship between poetry and performance.
Well, I mean, I think even the act of writing it all down, I think even the act of creating work that we do, the language lives on the page, but I think that we perform as soon as we touch pen to page. Um, we may not be building a world, right, the way that longer form fiction might do, or the way that people might sort of perceive it, but we are building a point in time. I am building this sort of vessel of a feeling that can only be captured really this way, right? And so I think that in that building, there's performance. As our acclaimed Dr. Maya Angelou says, language is a living organism. I believe language is a living organism. She says she believes that it's what holds the stars in firmament, right? Um, and so, yeah, it's from my mouth into the fabric, right? It sticks to the walls. It lives in your plaid shirt, your flannel shirt. It's that we're wearing it, right? We're breathing it in, right? And so I think that to understand that is really critical, whether you lean toward the writing or the performance side. I think that if you don't have a relationship, if you aren't someone who is a conduit between the two, then I think that there is a gap. I think that there's something that's not fully materializing. I think that our work doesn't exist in a vacuum the way that we don't live our lives in a vacuum, right? Um, and in that means that because I'm not in relation just with self here, right? I'm not just existing in some void pocket. That everything I'm doing, every way in which I'm writing and sharing is in connection with something else. It's in relation to memory, to time, to feeling, to space, to person, to body, to spirit, to ground, to air. And so but people are so dissociated from that idea, and I only say that because I teach this, right? And so people are always like, whoa, like so many students are like, wait a minute. And I'm like, yeah, like you have to understand how connected you are. And that's my, it may feel nebulous, but that's the way I understand poetry and performance.
When there's something about being in a room with a bunch of people who are hearing the words for the first time that really
Yeah.
hammers home that sense of connection, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing too is like I can't remember the musician who said it, but it says, music is for the listener, but you're the first listener.
Yeah, right.
So it's the same. I say it's the same with poetry, right? It's that my poetry is, I'm sharing it with my audiences, whomever they may be, because I'm not going to obviously be in full control of that. But I'm the first reader, right? Like I'm the first listener. So that's the thing. That's why it's inherently a performance, because I am writing this down on the page for myself in the seat watching, you know? And so that in and of itself is its own kind of performance happening, right? And then the rest is out. So that's the thing, is like people have to know, yes, do I write a lot for myself? Absolutely. Because that's where it begins. I'm my first audience. But I'm also saying if I'm writing closely to myself, then I know I'm writing closely to others, because I am no separate from the rest.
Right. I was just going to say, if you believe in that idea of connection, then writing for yourself does not mean that you're not also writing for other people at the exact same time.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that's where I stand on it, and I kind of will die on that hill.
Well, it sounds to me like the Poetry Lounge was a really educational space for you as a writer, as a poet. I want to talk about that a little bit. You have a couple of degrees, but neither of them are in writing. You have an
Mhm.
associate's in fashion and apparel design and a bachelor's in education. But I'm curious to hear you talk a little bit about informal spaces of education and what that space, like the Poetry Lounge, meant to you as you were learning to be a writer and a poet.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I tell people all the time, like, I used to be a terrible writer, and partly was because I hadn't been writing, and that was because I didn't like writing, And that's the thing is, like, something has to happen for something to happen, It's like that was sort of one of the initial lessons without it being laid out as such. It was like, okay, I am here in community. I'm in a space where we're hearing approximately 40 to 50 poems every Tuesday night. And uh, that becomes this whole library of study because whether people are doing it in a way that you resonate with or whether they're doing it in a way you don't resonate with, that starts to train the ear, right? The things that I was impressed by 20 years ago are not the things that are, I'm a hard sell now. I'm a very hard sell. I think most people are crap. If I'm being the most frank. Um, and that's, speaking about the craft, because I think the other thing is that people also go, like you just said, my art was shit, right? Or you just said, that this was not good. And people internalize it as me saying how you feel is invalid or the experience you had is not real, right? But it's saying no, like I have nothing to do with your feeling of it all, right? Like that's yes, correct. This is part of the point. And I'm glad that you're sharing some form of catharsis with us, right? Like that is also yes, that is vulnerable, that is brave. Um, but then people don't understand. Like what I'm looking at is the craft of your work, right? Like are the decisions that you've made in the written work, are they done so with intent, like with intention, right? Are they done so in a way that supports everything you want to tell me about how you feel? And so those were the muscles that began to be exercised, because it becomes really iron sharpening iron, right? Um, you start to build this cohort of folks, and in a way, you're in your own passive low res, and it's a every Tuesday night low res, right? But I was also fortunate enough that the Poetry Lounge had the infrastructure where we were offering periodic workshops, right? Like whether it be the hosts or other working writers, professionals in the world, they were facilitating these very low cost workshops, and they were also local, right? And so the major breakthrough for me was I paid some money to join a few friends for a workshop. It was a 4-week intensive. So it was every Sunday for like 2 to 3 hours. We met at a location and it was like closed group of like 12 of us. And then, yeah, by the fourth week, you're like broken open. The workshop was by a writer by the name of Natalie Patterson. And she facilitated this workshop called Connecting with the Artist in You through Vulnerability and Integrity. That was the beginning of me becoming what some would consider a good writer, right? And also me respecting my work and also me challenging my own work, right? And me reflecting deeply on how I felt and what I wanted to say and how I wanted to do it. And the craft things get worked out, as you grow and continue to craft. But none of that would have gotten where it is today if it weren't for all of that, if it weren't for that just absolute decimating the outer sheath and you just are out into you're out in the world at this point. And so that was it. It just, I moved so much closer to who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be that. And that was groundbreaking for me. That was life changing and in many ways life saving for me.
Did you ever think about getting an MFA?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about I had thought about many years ago what grad school options might actually look like or be. Um, and then MFA, that comes up. Obviously, there's so many around me and alongside me who have theirs or have decided to pursue theirs. And I just I kind of made a deal with the universe that I would never go to grad school. Basically, my short answer is no, we're not. Um, it's just very funny because I say, and I've had students and other folks come and ask me, wanting my purest, insight. And I say, sure, do your thing, right? I'm never going to be the authority over what someone else is doing with their life and their agency, but do it. I say I don't think it's necessary. I don't think that it's necessary in the world that we live in today. I think that if you have an interest in teaching at a high level, that may be the only critical reason. But I think that there is worlds worth of MFA eligible stuff to engage with, right? And it's not to undermine people's academic paths, right? Do what you do. Or if you did it already, great, you did it. Congrats. But it's just to say, thinking about my own story, right? I wasn't even looking in the direction of writing. I wasn't even looking. It was so low on my list. It wasn't even on the page. um, and if it weren't for everything I know to be true within this community of this writing community, right? This, whether it be public, whether it be private, whether it be, academic, community-based, whatever the case might be, I can say, yeah, it's possible to get what you need without submitting that grad school application.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we're a podcast that talks a lot about MFAs, but we're not a podcast that is pushing people to get MFAs. We're like trying to create like some transparency about what this experience is really like so that people can make that decision for themselves if they want to pursue this thing or not. And I think one of the best parts of an MFA is it allows you to enter a writing community. But I love your experience. You found that writing community at the Poetry Lounge and in other spaces around LA. So you already kind of had that experience. And I think if people are unsure if grad school is the path for them, they should know that there are plenty of writing communities out there. There are plenty of workshops out there. You can find these spaces without going to grad school, right?
Yeah, and you can apply, like there are tons of series now that you can apply for from incredible names in the professional writing world, right? That are also way cheaper than grad school.
Right.
So it's just, it's like, obviously do you, like, but like the opportunity, it's literally there. It's one of those, where it's like the internet is definitely a double-edged sword, especially now. It's either AI slop or it's really meaningful stuff. We're kind of in two buckets at this point is what it feels like. And so, yeah, it's just like, luckily that edge of the sword that works in our favor is that, yeah, it's like I can get on the internet and look up so many things, right? Like there are so many, I can find workshops run by people that I know and don't know about subjects that I've either never engaged with or that I have way too much research in, right? And then there are just so many things that you can do. And I think part of why I'm such a champion for the communal space, not just because community is a value of mine, but because I think as a practice, especially within this craft, people do have this idea, right? That they need to be in this vacuum or that I need to be sitting at a secret window with a typewriter and this is where my magnum opus is born. And it's like, no, like sometimes it's listening to 20 other strangers do what they do, like, and figuring out what your story is from there. And so that's the thing is like, people just aren't, it's like you have to seek, like the community it exists. You have to make it, you can't just expect that to show up at your door, right? You just can't, have agency of your life. take the wheel. Take the wheel, turn the sails. I don't know how to work boats, but you know what I mean.
That being said, you do teach at the Vermont College of Fine Arts MFA program, a low-res program.
I do.
So I do want to hear about your experience, how you ended up with that gig, and how you've enjoyed teaching in that program.
So, first of all, I love it. I am so excited. Winter residency is around the corner from the time we are recording this episode. But it's also been life altering. It has been such a light, truly. It has been such a doorway to breathe, because so much of the other work that I do, so much of my other professional work that I do is incredible work, but it also can be very heavy. And it also just involves a lot of trivial administrative tasks that I just do not give a shit about. And I just never will. So that's just its own thing. So it's brought such a tremendous balance. It's such a light ask of me in comparison to the rest of the world, right? To have this commitment in the winter, in the summer, and then to be able to, walk alongside a handful of students every spring and fall as they develop their own work, as they get closer to their own voice, as they sharpen up all the tools in their own craft. It's just been such a gift. Like, the gratitude I have is just immeasurable. And VCFA found me. They when they moved over to the West Coast, they said, well, we need to find some West Coast people. And it's a divine intervention of sorts, because I was like, yeah, well, you found one of the best. You found one of the best West Coasters you got, one of the best Angelinos you could get. And they looked up writers, they looked up poets, because I think they needed some West Coast poetry faculty specifically, was one of the things. I don't quote me on that, I may be misremembering, but the internet brought me up, and they looked more into what I do, how I do it. They saw that I also hosted the lounge. And even came by to check it out once or twice. But and then they said, we would love to talk to you. What do you feel about teaching at the VCFA residency? And I said, quite honestly, I think about 13-year-old me didn't even think that language was this important to me, right? Didn't even think that, didn't even know that it would determine what my life would do. And so when I think about that, and to come to this moment, 22 years later, and I'm like, a university is looking for me. Like, a college is looking for me to come and talk to students about what I do as a writer. Like, that doesn't get much more magical than that, I think.
Yeah, I imagine that was a really beautiful moment. And then thinking back about that teacher who had that amazing influence on you when you were a kid, I imagine it's also really cool to be able to work with writers, talk about their work, and have a chance to maybe influence them too.
Yeah, honestly, shout out Mr. Thompson. Shout out wherever he is in the world, if he is still with us. But wherever he is, whether it be this world or the other one, yeah, it's incredible. It's just incredible. I don't even have any other way to describe it.
I think one of the really nice things about the MFA is that it allows students the chance to meet working writers. Like, they can meet all of these faculty members who are living the writer life, and that can look very different from person to person. So I'm curious to hear for you what it was like going into the MFA space in a unique position, someone who hasn't actually gone through the MFA yourself.
Right.
Because I think it's great that students get to meet you and they get to see that this is not necessary, right? Like, no matter how good or bad the MFA goes for them,
Right.
they can still have a writing life with or without this thing, right? So I think it's great that students are getting to meet you and see that path. I'm curious to hear what that experience was like for you coming into that space, having not been in it before.
It was incredibly intimidating. And I've had more than enough time with academia where it's not as intimidating as it probably would have been some years prior, but it still is, right? Because you're coming into a new system, and I know I have really valuable things to pass on to tons of people who, want to receive it. But, you have that question that's constantly sort of rattling or, spinning in my brain really was just like, will I have something meaningful to offer here, right? Will I be talking about things that feel really elementary? And, have I been left behind? Is kind of, you kind of have this idea. It's like, well, maybe, I haven't. And then, you have to fight the voice that says you're an imposter, right? Um, and so those were the sort of other shadowy thoughts that kind of danced around in the back. But I just also I constantly reminded myself that like you're here, right? You are here and that's the answer. The answer is that you are here.
I think that's a good message for a lot of listeners who might be getting ready to enter an MFA program too, because I think a lot of us before going into an MFA program feel that sense of like imposter syndrome and
Yeah,
that wondering like when I enter this workshop space, am I going to have something useful for my peers? Something useful to say to my peers about their work? Am I going to be adding something to this community or just taking from this community?
right.
So I think like you kind of had some of those same feelings. And I think it's
Yeah.
important for listeners to know absolutely they have something to add.
Well, 100%. We are all out here peopling, and life is lifing, and we're gonna. It's like yeah, we're not gonna have something to say about everything. I don't have. Please don't have something. This is why I'm a poet. I don't have something to say about everything. But you will have something to say if you already don't, right? And that's the thing. And so we can't just keep that quiet, right? Just because and I get it, I really do. But people who are going, you are where you're at, so keep going. It's literally that simple, and also do it scared. Everyone's got fear,
Right.
just do it scared, because yeah, we've all heard it. We don't want to be, you don't want to look back 30, 40, 50 years from now and be like, damn, what if? So I always, my motto, I need to start getting some t-shirts or some hats or some shit made. But my motto is always run it. Run it. You're alive at the end of the world, so run it. That's it. That's what I have to offer always.
All right. So we mentioned that you just finished your run at the Poetry Lounge as a co-host there.
Yes.
But I hear that you're going to be doing a similar thing with VCFA at their residency called Hunger Mountain Live. This is in conjunction with their literary magazine, Hunger Mountain. I'm curious to hear what that's going to look like at the VCFA residencies.
Well, so Hunger Mountain Live, I think the idea so far is for it to kind of be a bit different each time, right? I definitely know that it's going to be different in theme. Um, this upcoming one is it's a happening. So this one is involving the relationship between stage and audience. So what's happening on stage and the audience having some sort of integral contribution to that. So I really don't know what to expect of this one coming up. But the vision of Hunger Mountain Live in and of itself is just so beautiful. And the inaugural one that we had back in June was, yeah, it was a kind of magic that I think was a perfect welcome to the west side of things, right? I think it was really beautiful. The space is beautiful on CalArts campus. The performances were wonderful. Like the students coming through VCFA are truly so talented, and seeing the different facets of all the genre that they do, it's been really beautiful. But that one, yeah, so that one was really pretty direct. That one was giving us, here's a few like poets who have made a career out of it, and they're going to share a few performances with you and kind of mark those moments really throughout the night. And then there was, some open mic happening in between. So theirs was kind of like a nod to DPL, a nod to the Poetry Lounge, really, in that regard. And it was just really stunning. It was in collaboration with our space, and I couldn't have asked for a more beautiful night. And so, yeah, the vision for it, I think, is to continue with that, is to continue, um, encouraging students to reimagine what their relationship is to their literary work and how it changes shape. This is so funny because this is kind of dipping into my lecture that I'm going to give at winter residency on spoken word as poetic commune. But yeah, just really thinking about and reimagining what their relationship is to their work and just to the world around them and how performance does change the shape of literature.
Well, it sounds beautiful and it sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm really excited for your students to get to experience that. Before we go, I have one last question for you. As a faculty member in an MFA program who's worked with a lot of students at this point, what advice do you have for MFA students to get the most out of that experience?
Like, you just please get your head out of your ass. Yeah, I think ultimately, like, writers should remain open. I think that they need to understand or start to put into practice that the world is an influence, right? The world is an influence to your work, and that we shouldn't pigeonhole ourselves to the literary only influencing the other literary, right? And so that's the thing. Like sometimes, like I had one of my students who has written some incredible work. One of the things that I had recommended to them, I said, well, I said, here's one book, but I don't have any other books to add to your list. But I have three animated films I think you should watch. And because I think that people need to be open to that. I think that we come in with these like pretentious identities about what being a writer is. And again, that this whole secret window, and I'm living in a vacuum, and here comes the next great novel, the next great American novel, right? The next New York Times bestseller. And I think that we need to really deprioritize those motivations. Those are your ambitions. I understand. But I think that we discredit ourselves as writers and our own written work when that becomes such a primary motivation. So I think remaining open and expand it, spread, those limbs out and make contact with what is around you.
Well, it's been a lot of fun making contact with you, Edwin. Thanks so much for coming by here and chatting with me.
Thank you, Jared. It was a joy.